We are
Yeah.
live.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm the conspiracy theorist guy on this show, Kevin. The
Yes.
freedom variant, but I'm free to believe in modern day conspiracy theories. I'm pretty happy. Like I have one conspiracy theory that I want to put out there. We're ruled by dumb, aggressive psychopaths. I think that it's going to be hard.
That's not conspiracy theory, Tim. That is political science.
Oh, all right.
That is an area of academic study.
Fair enough.
What an intro, Tim. I'm like, oh man, like I didn't even grab a real beer for this.
And then I hit you with that right away.
Yeah, great. All right, cool. New direction. Fine. Roll with it. No. But speaking of being ruled by psychopaths, we are going to talk elections today. Of course, lots of local elections that happened in New York State. So we're going to talk about that. I think we'll talk about like some of the specific like consequences and effects and trends in our local areas, and maybe if y'all listening have some trends to point out for your area in the comments, we'd love to hear about them, love to talk about them. But interesting stuff going on in Monroe County, and I want to talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I've got some news from Otsego County that I feel as though I'll save it for the show, but I feel like the right thing happened and it's good.
Yeah, right on. But yeah, no. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk, and then maybe we'll get to the interesting stuff like banning coconut milk.
It's yeah, we definitely should talk about that. I'm gonna make some. I've got some thoughts on that.
All right,
beautiful.
Great. Yeah. So we'll talk about that stuff and maybe a few other things. And Patricia wants to know if she can quote you on that. We're ruled by dumb, aggressive psychopaths.
Please do.
You can. It's on video. It's out there now.
I mean, it seems it's just a conspiracy theory, right? Like I'll get dismissed and written off as a conspiracy theorist, but as Kevin pointed out, perhaps backed up by, I think he said science.
Yeah. Science. Trust the science, bro.
Yeah, trust the science, bro. We are the science, Kevin.
Yes. That's right. All right. So anyway, we'll get to the show in 5 seconds.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right. Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. I mean, it's freezing rain. You never know what's going to happen with my internet, but I am here, and it's the most exciting day of the year, the day after Election Day.
The day after.
It's just incredibly, we learned so much about ourselves and the directions our society is moving in.
It is educational. I'll give you that. But it's good to be doing the show after the election. If you're listening to this on WYSL on Thursday evening, welcome. Thank you. We're recording this on Wednesday, so that way we didn't have to make a bunch of predictions that we would end up having to be wrong about. So that's good reason to do the show after the election. We get to be, confident in the results of what has happened. There are certainly results. There are consequences of the elections. We're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about some stuff in the Rochester region, in Monroe County, in that area, and also what's going on in Tim's area. Tim, do you want to go first? You want to talk about like a county clerk race?
Yeah. So look, it's kind of a wonderful event, really. Like there is a strong current of like identity politics going on in Otsego County, where the standard things that the emotional things that we're seeing in society are being reflected in our local races, and to that end, we had a 49-year-old lady named Jennifer Basili running for Otsego County Clerk. She's been a clerk at the Otsego County Clerk's office for 15 years. The lady Kathleen Sinnock Gardner was retiring after 20 years of service, and so basically, we had one of the local young people in the Democratic Party they're very proactive. They're very like looking to acquire political power. That in and of itself is not bad, but the Otsego County Clerk race didn't seem to me to be the place for that. Like I could see a representative, district representative, or a town representative, but going.
Yeah, that was actually like going to be part of like the theme of what I wanted to talk about too.
Oh no, I'm ruining it for you.
No. It's actually it's a great like joint discussion, because like something that like kind of bothers me is when you have like these like certain types of positions, right? Like a town clerk, where like is an important administrative function position, right? Like even as a libertarian, I'm like, this is a thing that needs to happen, and it's fine if we're going to have elections for this, but like there's a legitimate administrative function that needs to be like fulfilled here. It's not about your politics. And people, it's weird, like people try to make judge races about this too, which is interesting. Not that the judge candidates themselves, they don't talk policy like ever, like it's just not a thing they do,
right?
They can't do that, but still, like voters sometimes try to make it that way. And like you'll get these like people who run for like county clerk, town clerk, or like a city council seat or something, and they're like, yeah, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna talk about like immigration. I'm like, what? I'm going to talk about foreign policy. Like, this whole campaign's about Palestine now. Wait, what?
We had a town board member in the city of Oneonta being like, I want to know how we can bring more immigrants to Oneonta. And it's like, all right, look, you have bigger fish to fry. Like our parking garage is falling in the ground, right? Like you have a $10 million grant from the state that you've already given away most of the money to restaurants that have opened their doors and closed their doors. You've got big fish to fry, buddy. Like, can you just, concentrate on your job? So, but to bring it full circle,
right.
The person that lost was very gracious in defeat. Both of them were campaigning on having a mobile DMV office, because I don't know if you remember, but back in 2020, a lot of like DMV offices closed. They cut funding for the DMV. There was people weren't allowed really to go into the DMV. A lot of the DMVs weren't open anyway. So they closed down the least busy DMV of the two that we have available in Otsego County. And it's a 30-mile drive now to get to the DMV, 40-mile drive for people to get to the DMV. The situation out in southern Otsego County is it would be convenient for a lot of people to have a DMV. So this Basili and the other person whose name is escaping me, but his graciousness in defeat, McGuire Benton, it deserves like respect. So I'll look up his name for him, and put it out there. Like, it was cool what he said. But anyways, they were both running on this mobile DMV thing where they're going to have office hours available for DMV processing in other parts of the county, which as a county clerk, that's kind of like, that's a good idea. Like something that makes life more convenient for the citizens of your county. That's a good thing. So I'm glad that she won. And she's going to do a fine job. I had to do some business up in the clerk's office. She's great. She's very nice, very like professional, exactly what you would want from a clerk. So it's beautiful. And then we had a libertarian running in, and he made me aware of it rather late. Well, he made me aware of it, and then I forgot about it. And then he reminded me of it, and he did pretty good. He didn't win. It was against an incumbent who is a conservative Republican, but a decent, pragmatic guy. So he did pretty good, though. He got like 30% of the vote. So it's that's pretty good. It's a pretty high score for a libertarian, really.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
His campaign platform was great. I posted it today to my Facebook page. It's just like I want to enhance opportunity in Oneana through deregulation. It was very simple and straightforward, and I want people to be able to build more affordable housing. That's it.
Right. No, I mean that seems like a pretty clear message, and like, in terms of like being able to build stuff easier, that's a good local issue, right? Like that's a thing. So, so one of the things I was thinking about, because I'd kind of gotten into is like, people bringing these national issues, these culture war issues sometimes into like local races. And like, it bugs me. Like it might be effective. It might be effective for some people, like, but it bugs me. And it was funny because like the county executive race here, I felt like veered in that direction a handful of times. So Adam Bello, he's an incumbent. He ended up winning like pretty handily. Running, the guy running against him was a dude named Marcassini, who came very, very close to unseating Louise Slaughter back in the day for Congress, and has run a couple times since. Hasn't gotten quite as close in any of these races. And the thing that like I think he's a smart guy. Like he probably would not remember me, but like I've talked to him like a couple times. Seems like a smart guy. Seems like a nice guy. I feel like he embraced some of the culture war stuff, like post like 2016.
I'm so
Like
done
at least
with
a little
culture
bit.
war stuff.
And maybe he always like was that way. Like I said, I only talked to him like for all of like 2 minutes total. And
Yeah.
like I watched the debate with them, and like like some of the issues they bring up, like he made like immigration a big thing. Now I know like it's a thing. There's immigrants like who are staying at the Holiday Inn in downtown Rochester, but like he made that like a big thing, right? And some of the stuff too is like, okay, like, yeah, like we're gonna stop all this. And Adam Bell is kind of like, well, like we saw what some of these other counties did. They tried to stop this, they got sued, and we just made some changes so we could better control the terms of like how immigrants ended up here, because we can't really prevent people from coming into our town if they're here legally, in this case they are. So we just try to make the best of this situation. Okay, like that's fair. That's a pragmatic approach. I get it. And then he's like, no, we got to stop immigration. I'm gonna like fight this, and I'm gonna like talk to the governor, and I'm gonna talk to the federal government. I'm like, okay. And then like there's a few times he did it like about bail reform too. Like, oh well, like I'm gonna advocate better to like to change some of the bail reform stuff. I'm like, all right, like if you want to do that though, like run for assembly, run for senate, like that.
Right.
Those are positions where you're doing those things.
Right.
Like the county executive, like to me, like there's certain roles that you're able to do within like county executive positions, and a lot of it is like administering the dictates of the state, which can be interesting and frustrating. And then there's some stuff that they can control to like make life easier or more difficult for the residents of their county. And it felt like a lot of the discussion just kept going back to like some of these issues that were like national issues, right? And it was so weird too, because like a lot of this, like the Democrats, and that people point this out, like the Democrat got endorsed by a bunch of the police unions. He talked about spending more money on the police. Like he kind of tacked right a bit, like in a way that I've like criticized him for. And like he's just like, no, like he needs to do more about crime, and he needs to do. I'm like, I don't know. He's already like asking to spend more money on the police. He's already asking to like do a bunch of other stuff. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like that's what it is. And John pointed out like voter turnout was again the issue. D's mobilized, our didn't. Like Monroe County is like an interesting place in that like the city did not turn out that much. Like people always like, oh, like of course, like the city, like no one showed up in the city. Like the Democrats in the suburbs did. And the Democrats started making a bunch of gains. They made more gains in the county legislature. They officially have taken over the county legislature now. They took over some like town council positions. They took over like a handful of like town supervisor like that type of stuff. They made a bunch of gains. And in part, like it's part of it is I think like some Republicans do run on these national issues. They also are probably hurt by, people kind of moderating out in our area. A lot of people are kind of like, this culture war stuff's exhausting, and it's weird that you're running on this at a local level. And this isn't all Republican candidates. There's a lot of really great ones out there, but like when you hear this stuff, it's exhausting. Or when you feel that like they have joined a party where you don't agree with this stuff, it can be exhausting. And then a lot of Republicans left too. Like frankly, a bunch of Republicans, they moved to either outside counties or down south, right?
Or
so
there's like the state.
Exactly. They left, completely.
Yeah.
So like that's part of it too. Like it is like a shift in party registration due in part to some people leaving, and due in part to people just like no longer being engaged with the Republican Party. And I'm among them too. I used to be a registered Republican. I was like, I don't know, this ain't for me anymore. So I'm gonna join this other party. Right.
Yeah, much cooler.
And now,
yeah, much
exactly.
cooler party. Much cooler.
Libertarians, man.
Wow.
And
we're gonna change the world, Kevin.
That's the hope. And but yeah, like there's been a shift, and like it's now the Republican Party, like, and it's felt like this thing where they're just trying to like hold on to a little bit of what they got. Like they poured a bunch of money into some like ledge races, and it's it feels like it's been declining for a while, and there's been a big fight at the county level. It's been a whole thing. Like it just feels like they can't do anything to shift the tide. And I know a bunch of people like, oh, like people just said they're letting the county go, they're letting the city go, like whatever, like, but I don't know, like they don't seem to be able to do anything to like build a positive vision for how people want to live in this county. And until they can do that, they're gonna lose more.
Yeah. So I want to kind of take a shot at John's comment as well. There is this it was put forth by ABC that the Democrats do a much better job of actually mobilizing in the off-cycle years, where they kind of
it used to be the opposite. It used to be what Republicans were a lot better at mobilizing the off-cycle years.
It's actually a good strategy, though. Like we should mobilize. Like libertarians should mobilize in off-cycle years, because you can win a good local election with a decent job for somebody with 150 votes in a small county. You know what I mean? Like go after it. Like
and then like you
strategy.
No, and then like, and we should talk about like shifting the off-cycle elections into like, presidential years, which is a thing that's like kind of on the table in New York State. But like in these like local election years, like it's the people, it tends to be a more engaged audience. It isn't always, but it tends to be a more engaged audience. Like a group of people are like, okay, I care about like what is actually happening in my town, and I'm not just voting straight ticket, because I feel a certain way about like the president, and I only vote every 4 years. I mean, only moderate offense to the people who vote every 4 years, but like there are a lot of voters who do that. Like it's a thing. And so which is why I think it's a good thing if we keep these elections in the odd years, to make sure that like there is that opportunity to engage with people who care about like their local issues. Doesn't always work out, but that I think there's something
well, it works out one way or the other, and whether it has a positive impact or a negative impact is
right. No, like let me rephrase that. It doesn't always work out in the way that I hoped.
Right,
but
it doesn't always work out.
Yeah, exactly. The elections happen, power transfers, we move on.
Unless you don't, and then you get arrested, get thrown in jail as an insurrectionist or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So far, no one has stormed, like the county office buildings that I'm aware of. I haven't seen it on Twitter now.
I mean, I stuck to my voting is violence, Kevin, and I've been very anti-violent this year. So, frankly, I did not vote.
Didn't vote. Wow.
Yeah, and look, the people that want the jobs, those town board jobs and stuff like that, like, fine. It's good that they're in off-cycle years. If someone wants to challenge you, you kind of have to present yourself in a better light. You might have to do some actual campaigning. You might actually have to put up some signs. You might actually have to come across with an idea. But what you have on a lot of your small town boards is a group of people that are there for health insurance, and because they've been doing it for a while, and because this is something that's a part-time job to them because they care about their community. And unless you're really bringing something to the table, I say, like, their hands are practically tied. They're not making any big changes. The worst thing they're going to do is hire a more aggressive dog catcher or something like that.
Well, no. It depends on what it is, right? Like, I feel that way sometimes with like the county level positions, because like they really, like, a lot of their budget is coming from New York State, but the town and city level stuff, like the things that they do, like, really do matter. Like, again, like this is where like zoning comes from, right? Like, and I was just like tweeting about how like Rochester has like it's one of the top cities for not building housing, And as a direct result of that, because we see what happens when you build more housing and you make it easier for developers to just do their thing, rent prices go down. What's happened in Rochester, where it's nearly impossible to build stuff, rent keeps going up. And instead of addressing that issue, we have my member of city council being like, well, you know what the real problem is? It's short-term rentals. Those people are just taking up all the spots, and there's nothing we can do. There's a fixed pie of spots. Our hands are tied. No, just build more stuff.
Just let people build stuff.
If there's too many apartments and stuff taken up by short-term rentals, just build more apartments. That's all you got to do. You just let people build more apartments. It's really as easy as that. It works like that. I mean, Tim, you had alluded to some sort of, science, some sort of study. Can you illuminate that? Do you know anything about this thing?
So
what's it called?
These crazy guys from history wrote these books and stuff like that. And occasionally you can get into a university that has entire departments called, and hang on, guys, economic departments. They teach you about the laws of supply and demand, and they teach you about how the government, you're blown away. I knew you would be, because not a lot there's some simple principles behind a lot of economic theory, and one is that supply and demand affect each other. If supply contracts, prices go up. If demand goes up, prices also go up. But if you do things to ameliorate the supply issues, make things easier to build, lower the costs and interference in building, the prices go down. So if you want cheaper rent, build apartments. Guys, it's just this
that's what it is. Let people build apartments. Let people build houses. That's what it is. There's plenty of evidence. It sounds so simple, and it is. That's the thing. The places that made it easier, their rents went down.
Every place. It's invariably, you posted a link to a study, invariably, where they loosened up restrictions on building, rents went down. That's it.
Yeah.
Even in New York City, where people have fled, New York City, guess what, Kevin? Rents are going down for the first time in years. I mean, it's a bit draconian. It's a bit messed up there. Sure. But rents are getting cheaper, and that's good news.
Right. So now you too can own a 300 square foot studio apartment or rent one for, $4,000 a month. It's
what a deal.
What a deal. Great prices there. You won't find anything better than that, folks. All right. Anyway, we're about to come up on our first break. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution on WYSL. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
All right.
But yeah, I don't know. Might just say I there's a bunch of comments in here. Let's see, I see John and Patricia and Vince, and I think I'm gonna save it for the radio show. I want to jump in.
Yep.
And do that because I want to talk about voting versus not voting too. Because I have a philosophy why I always vote in local elections, even though there is a bunch of there's a bunch of uncontested things on my ballot.
It's funny because you mentioned that sewer district stuff and the small city stuff about schools, and those ballot proposals passed in Otsego County.
So. They did, yeah, and then it was pretty overwhelming. I did end up voting for the first one, but I just couldn't support the second one. You know why?
No,
I'm just a big fan of cutting waste.
Oh man, I should have tried to answer that. That would have helped your joke. That was well played, though. That was really well played. Well done.
Yep, had to make that joke. But anyway, we should probably get back to the actual show. The folks listening on the podcast at least get that joke. We'll keep that in there in the edit. Go back in 3, 2. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm still here, Kevin, and I'm loving every minute of this conversation. We had some comments left over from our viewership
Yeah, we
on
did. So
the
let's
social
get
medias.
to a couple of those. John on YouTube says, for the first time in forever, I did not vote. No libertarians to vote for or write in.
Yeah, well, the Democrat
Yeah.
and Republican duopoly monopoly has very effectively limited our access to the ballot. But as Kevin is about to point out, or there is in these off-cycle elections, you can create your own party, get enough signatures, and run as a libertarian. You can name whatever party you can name your party practically
Yeah.
whatever you want. It's freedom, baby.
Yeah, I mean, you are like and again, that's why I think like these local elections are so important to keep in the odd years too, is because again, you can really engage people. That is your opportunity. Like in some of these legislative races in Monroe County, it's only like a few thousand people voting. Like it's not a lot. Like you have the opportunity to like literally talk to like hundreds of voters and like move the needle on the election sometimes. Like, it's possible. I've seen a guy do it.
I have a hilarious story right on that exact subject. So the local paper that collated all of the election results did everything in percentages, right? So I'm seeing things like 75% to 25%. And I'm pretty sure that means like 4 people voted or 8 people voted. You know what I mean?
That's how like sometimes when you like dig into the numbers too, you're like, okay, like what is like it looks like a big swing. Oh, that's like 15 people. Like that's the difference.
Like, he won 8-7, and so that's like 56%.
Yes.
Like, wow, that looks like a big, but and so look, there is an opportunity to have impact. But and Kevin, like, bear with me. I've gone to these town board meetings, and it's wonderful to see the people in action doing the mundane job that they're doing. But that's why I had to run for Senate. I'm like, I can't run for town board again. I did run for town board once as a write-in, and I got 9 votes, and I thought I won. But unfortunately, there was some sort of whisper campaign, and somebody else got 33 write-in votes. It was a little weird. Like, they were threatened by me. I know. Like, they kind of got out ahead of me on that one. But anyway, I came in second, but I didn't get a seat on the town board. And when I went to the town board meeting, I was really glad that I didn't win because
well, you're like, oh, this is boring.
I mean, yeah. Like, they would not let me talk in that format like I talk in this format. And I just don't think that would be fair. It doesn't suit my personality.
You can't, add as much of that color commentary to the things that are going on. It's considered rude and not part of parliamentary procedure, and you'll get censured.
Yeah. That would be great. God, that would be fun. Now that you put it that way, though, I guess I could have some fun.
Yeah, that's right. Then you just have fun with it. But again, just to reiterate, like the point you'd made too, like for like some of these like local elections, like getting on as like an independent nominating body, it's only a few hundred signatures a lot of times, like which might sound like a lot if you've never done it before, but it's really not. It's not that bad.
I think we're down in the 20s.
Depending on where you are, because it's based on like the number of voters in the district.
Yeah, it's way down there. It's really a good opportunity. You could go out to your neighbors one day and have 15 of the signatures, and that's it. You're good to go.
So you could do that and get on the ballot. It's gonna help. It's not that it's impossible to win a write-in campaign, but it is difficult. It's a lot harder, just because like
it is.
You get a bunch of people who are just like, they'll protest vote, or, they won't remember like what your name is when they get into the voting booth, and then they'll just write in Mickey Mouse or something, right? Like
sure.
It's just
they'll write it in the wrong spot and they won't count it for you. Like,
exactly. Seen lots of that, but yeah, no, you could do that. And then Patricia said, I don't vote. I didn't either. I didn't vote. No one was worth going out and voting for. Well, here's to Patricia, John, and you, Tim, too. Like the reason why I would say like I always vote no matter what is like if I don't vote at all, it looks like I'm just like not engaged, right? Like to politicians, like, oh, okay, whatever. Like a bunch of people don't care, right? Like that's what it is. If I show up and I vote, like even if I'm like putting in write-ins and stuff like that, I showed up. I can go up and like spoil my ballot. I showed up and I voted. I chose not to support those people, right? Like that is, like I had several races where like I wrote in people, even if they're uncontested, because I'm like, no, I don't. I want to show that there are more people who are just like, no, I don't agree with this. Like, let's, have something else out there.
No, look, that's great. I'm not happy that I didn't vote. It's more an offshoot of being very busy and knowing that like that this off-season election cycle wasn't that important, and that like I really respect the job that my town board members do, even though I don't necessarily agree with their end decision making on everything, but they're pretty cool. They're just there doing a job,
Yeah.
right? So I felt like we were in good hands, so I didn't worry about voting.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's what a lot of folks like politicians assume. If you're frustrated with them and don't show up, they're gonna assume like, oh well, no one cares. Everyone thinks it's fine, right? And if it is fine, then that's great. That is what it is. And I'd rather people not vote on stuff too than to vote ignorantly. And it's so funny. I don't know. So there's a Supreme Court judge race in our 7th judicial district in this area, right? There's one Democrat and 2 Republicans on. Like the Republicans, like one was an incumbent, was a new person, and they were both like running serious races. The Democrat was not running a serious race. And by not running a serious race is a woman named Margot Garant. She's actually like a politician from Long Island. And the only reason she was on the ballot is because she was on the ballot for a position down in Long Island and like need to step down. She wanted to step down for like health reasons. And the only way that you can like have someone step off the ballot and like get a replacement on there is if you either die or you run for a judgeship. And so sometimes like you'll get these like weird placements of judgeships, like these weird candidates that aren't even from the area in New York, because they're trying to get off the ballot for something else.
Okay.
And that was that case. That being said, she did get like a lot of votes in Monroe County. Like she actually beat one of the Republicans. She got 33.5% of the vote.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
She got 68, almost 69,000 votes in the county. And and I don't know, I'm like, okay, did people vote for her because they just like they knew something about the other judge candidates, or because like they always vote Democrat no matter what, and so like, yeah, just fill in the bubble. Like, I don't know, talking to people, like the judge races tend to be very low information. People aren't sure what to like do with that, and like it's weird to me because like I knew what the race was, I knew what she was doing, and I'm like, so why are so many people voting for this woman? Like, I don't get it.
Just the party affiliation, though, right? Isn't
Like,
that
I think that's mostly it.
the sad part of where we're at? They're just like, so yeah, that was actually when I'm talking about my earlier race and where the kid was a very gracious loser, McGuire Benton. He still got several thousand votes, and to me, I'm like, I'm not like he's an identity politics guy, which I don't like. So I don't think that should be important. But to 4,000 people in Otsego County, it was important. And I just don't understand that, like because he painted himself blue, he got a vote. And that is not the race to be doing that in,
No, I mean, like, I agree it's not the race to be doing that, but like there's some people who respond to that. Again, I complained about like bringing kind of a national culture war thing into this. Like I'd retweeted this guy, Ken Giardin, earlier. Like there's a guy down in I think it was Long Island who ended up winning his race running on like, we're gonna fight immigration and crime and stuff. Like some people respond well to that. Like I don't like it when like local politics becomes about national politics, but some people do.
Right. No, that's fair.
And so I get to this one from Vince, who says the hardest thing an elected local libertarian deals with is spending tax money that you wish you didn't have. It is going to get spent regardless. What's the most libertarian way to spend stolen money?
Do your best to lower taxes. He knows this. He did. Vince actually, we did a live show together, and it was one of my earlier live shows, and I can remember him kind of doing some crowdsourcing for crowdfunding for a major disaster that they had in his area that they didn't have to raise. Who decided to help fund the situation? It was like, it's a great question. do your best to lower taxes and then come up with creative solutions when real big problems come up. And Vince did that.
No, I mean that's great. And like my response to that question again, it was really enlightening. I know not all Libertarian Party affiliates did this in New York, but like we decided to like allow for some cross endorsement in some races in 2019. And it was really interesting talking to like town council candidates talking about these things, right? So like one, like obviously on the local level, you can like affect like regulation things, right? I talked about my zoning thing, right? You can do that. And then there's also like, okay, the town collects money to spend on these things like plowing services, right? Okay, if you are on the town council, like how do you approach that? Do you keep these services in house? Do you have a contract? How often do you renew the contract? Does the town actually vet the contracts to make sure that they're getting a good deal? Like, are people complaining about the quality of the roads? Like, so, okay, so for that stuff that like these are services, baseline services that people expect, what do you do with that? And then when you have the option to like spend money versus not spend money with something like trash collection, right? That's an issue in towns around here. Some towns have municipal trash collection, some don't. Do they bring that on? Is there high enough population? Does it save like individuals money? Is it worth subsidizing that service? And then there's stuff like, okay, we have these municipal buildings or something. Do you spend money to upgrade them and make them more efficient or add solar panels? Like, there's certain like legitimate functions of government, do you buy the good toilet paper too? Like, but there's some like legitimate functions of government, of local government. They're going to like do certain things in the town, or, I can think of like, there's a case around here with like a library, right? There's an accusation from like, interesting enough, Democrat candidates that the Republican Party had overspent on the library and put the town in a difficult position. Okay, now what do you do with that?
How do you fix that?
Yeah, how do you fix that? Do you cut other services? Do you raise taxes? Like, where do you get this other money from if you've now put yourself in a position of like kind of kicking the can down the road and selling bonds to fund a library that people wanted, right?
Isn't the answer to just go beg the state for money? Like, I think that would, like, you go campaign like, I'm gonna get the money from the state because I'm a Democrat.
That drives me bananas, because like the city does this all the time. Like, and it didn't cost us a thing. I'm like, yes, it did. It did cost us stuff. It cost me stuff. Like, just because the state or the feds are paying for it does not mean it didn't cost a thing. Yeah, it did.
One of the things that one of the Democrat that I was running against when I ran for Senate, and he was very upfront about it, and he stated it as a net positive. He's like, well, since I'm a Democrat, I'm going to be able to bring a lot more money home to Senate District 51. And I'm like, more money than the Republican? I'm like, he's like, yeah, because I'm a Democrat. I'm like, and that's a good thing? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, there's a problem there. I'm saying that politics is all corrupt, and you're saying, no, it's not corrupt because I can bring money home to our district because I'm a Democrat. And I'm like,
and like the implied thing is like, yeah, sure, it's corrupt, but it's going to benefit you more if I'm the guy dealing out the
yeah, you can have more bridges, bud. And I'm like, oh, okay, like, great.
Yeah, right.
More bridges, like, more culverts.
Listen, and again, it's like, I get that, like, okay, the state's going to spend certain money on stuff, the feds are going to spend like money on stuff, and like, you need to make sure if there's a legitimate need, like, you get some of that, right? Like, that's just it's not a good thing, but that's what it is. But like, it feels so gross when people talk about it, and it grinds my gears. And people are like, oh, it's basically free because we got the feds to pay for 75% of it. No, it ain't.
No, it ain't.
Yeah, it's not really paid for. It's just debt. That's all it is.
Yeah, and you're stuck with the maintenance costs on whatever it is, like, forever. It's an added expense regardless of where the free money came from.
Yeah, because people do that like that. That's a big thing with like towns, and they will get like state and federal grants for roads, and then when it's time to like maintain the roads, when it's time to repair them 30 years later, they can't do it. They're like, oh, we kind of expected to have more money by the time this came up, and now we don't. What do? We overbuilt our infrastructure and put ourselves in a difficult position.
You get mad at your constituents and raise their taxes. Like,
you beg for more money or you raise taxes, right?
Yeah.
And then, and then you get the money, you get the big thing, you overbuild again, and then it's your grandchildren's problem, right? When they're getting elected to town board, and they're like, what do we do with this?
If you're the guy that brings home the bacon, though, Kevin, one of the net positives is that on certain stretches of the highway, they will put your name on a sign.
Yeah, no, exactly. They'll name a couple buildings and stretches of highway after you. It's
Yeah.
and isn't that all worth it in the end?
Arguably, if you're not religious, that sign may outlive you. Then your legacy is going on into the next generation.
The what's his face Memorial Boondoggle Highway. Hooray.
Who's that guy?
Yeah. All right. Anyway, it's time for a break now. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're gonna be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
All right, that was fun.
Yeah.
Hopefully it was funny.
Yeah, no, hopefully it was good. Appreciate the comments, folks.
Yeah.
And
see, the housing crisis could be solved so many different ways, like deregulating housing for one, right? But then again, I've got to go back to just how difficult it is to rent places out. Like decent people are getting overlooked because they're in a low income situation, because people are like, well, I can't. The last time I rented somebody that's in this situation, they stayed forever and I couldn't get rid of them. And so it's like, it's so not fair. And we're punishing the wrong people. It's just
I mean that's the frustrating part again. And this is like what you're talking about, like the state level like eviction stuff. Like this is a law that like was built out of good intentions, but like ends up harming some of the people that it's supposed to be protecting, right? Because it ends up being a seen and unseen thing. Oh, okay, so we're saving some people from getting evicted from like those jerk landlords, and what ends up happening as a result of that is exactly what you described. It's I'm just either not going to rent my property, or I'm going to do a short-term rental instead, or I'm going to sell it, or whatever. And yeah, you end up with people who are struggling to find housing because of that. And same with like developers, like, oh, I want to build this because like, now it's going to be a pain if I have to, rent it out to anyone.
Yeah. So what are we going to talk about? Oh, here we
go.
I
want to talk about this other thing for Vince too, because I think we're going to shift topics for the radio show, but I think this is interesting. So Vince says, before I was elected to my position, the town accepted a grant for New York State to put in a backup generator. However, the grant necessitated that we spend $150K on a generator 10 times larger than what was needed. And he goes on to say, a lot of times you're almost pushed to spend the money.
I don't know that almost, like, arguably, Vince, and I think you probably know this, and I think you would agree, so it's not an insult, but like almost isn't the right word. Literally, the government demands that you spend money because it's the whole game that they're playing, right? Like, oh, hey, we grew our economy. Oh, hey, we grew our infrastructure. Oh, hey, like
so like the specific situation that he's talking about, and I think we talked about it like in the context of like school board stuff before too, where it's like, well, sometimes it's like it's unfunded mandate stuff. Sometimes it's like, and this happens a lot at the county level, like you have to spend this Medicaid money because like we say so, right? Like that's just you have to, and you're going to raise the taxes and you're going to figure it out, right? That there's an unfunded mandate thing. And then there's like a grant situation where this happens a lot at schools. Like, okay, well, as a condition of federal funding that we are now reliant on, you have to do X, Y, and Z things. So they get you to do other things that then cost you more money that you have to raise taxes for in order to get money to like that you think you need to keep the lights on, right? In order to get the federal or state education money. And then there's stuff like this that he's talking about with the town grants. Okay, like we need to make this type of improvement and we want to get the state grant for this. Okay, so like the string attached to that state grant is we now have to spend maybe more than we might have otherwise done. And sometimes the math sort of makes sense, right? Like because you're getting the grant to do this thing and like you're getting the whole thing covered. And then, it's shifted onto someone else and it's like free money. And then sometimes you end up like putting your town in a worse off position because you're trying to get some grant money. And then you have to add on these other things in order to comply with the terms of the grant. And at the end of it, like, I've talked to like town folks and county folks about this before. And you're like, man, why do we even do that? Like it seemed like a good deal, but now we're like struggling to comply with this and end up being more expensive than the money we got in the first place.
That is the thing. And one other argument that I like is that I like this argument, right? Like these infrastructure jobs, like the grant money, people make decent money when they're working on those projects. A local or semi-local contractor makes good money for his employees. There's some of it that works, but what the argument is we're not getting the full external costs explained to us up front, and people don't seem to understand that down the road the maintenance on this is going to be a burden to the taxpayers. And the guy that took that construction job is not staying here unless we have a continuous supply of those construction jobs. He's going to go someplace else. So there's a long-term issue. Short-term thinking, the Warren Buffett School of Economics, has fully infiltrated our government, and therefore the broken window fallacy reigns supreme. They have to spend money to grow the economy, to have good jobs, to keep this thing going, but they go further in debt every single time they do it. And it's this vicious cycle, and we're destroying wealth. And every show I get to talk about the broken windows fallacy, I want to, make the point that we're throwing away wealth under the premise that we're boosting some sort of economic numbers that are not as meaningful as everybody thinks they are. Not when we account for inflation, not when we account for loss of wealth, not when we account for destruction of the middle class, not when we account for devaluation and people living on a fixed income. All of those things are problems when it comes to this Warren Buffett School of Economics. How's that? I changed it up a little bit. I added Warren Buffett, another kind of icon, like another people, like he kind of gets people hot. So I added him to my weekly rant about the broken windows fallacy.
It's good. We need some theme music for this. So I'll try to make sure I'm ready for that next time.
Yep.
I'll anticipate the rant and just go.
Something like the circus music.
There you go. Well, whatever tone you want to set.
Mm-hmm. It is a circus, so that's the tone.
So
speaking of circuses, what are we going to talk about next segment?
We're talking about some federal issues. I think we'll pivot a little bit. So we're going to go back in like 20 seconds or so. We'll talk about the car shutoff thing. We'll talk about the Prime Act, and maybe like people are talking about the milk bill again. So we'll.
Oh yeah, that Fetterman, that guy.
He's talking about the is it the Dairy Pride Act? Is that still the one?
I think that's Dairy Pride. Yeah. Yes, Dairy Pride.
Yeah, I don't know. That's ridiculous. All right. Anyway, we're gonna go back now. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Willis Jr. today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Marion O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and I guess we've got to shift away from the local politics angle, and we got to talk about some highly volatile, just state of the art kind of discussions that are going on. Oh wait, no, actually there is a good one, right? We're going to talk about Thomas Massie, one of my favorite politicians, first, right?
Go for it. Talk about Thomas Massie. Well, what's he up to?
Well, which one should we talk about? Should we talk about his Prime Act? No, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. He took on the entire world by basically saying, I do not want to fund the kill switch law. And again, they do weird things, right, in the House where they'll pass a law and then they have to fund the law, and the law doesn't go into effect unless they fund it. So they've already passed this law that every new car is going to have a kill switch in it, which, Kevin, what could be the premise of a kill switch? Like, what are they going to do? Like,
drunk driving is
drunk
like,
drivers? They're going to
there's that's the basic premise of it is that drunk driving and public safety is so like I'll kind of present that side of it. Like I don't actually agree with it, but like basically the idea is that like every car should have some sort of passive way to be able to detect whether or not you've been consuming alcohol or you may be impaired while driving, and then can like shut off on its own, and then also like have ways for like the government to be able to shut down your vehicle too, right? So those are ways to do that. Yeah, and that's which is it's a bit creepy. I mean, like they can already sort of do it, right? Like if you have like an OnStar system, I think they can shut down your car. I mean, like the way they pitch it is like if your car is stolen, like we'll slow it down, type
right?
of stuff.
Isn't that what they call it?
No, that's the tracking one, but
okay.
Like so, it's like it's already a thing, and they want to like make it a part of every vehicle moving forward. But really, the focus on this is
controlling every aspect of our life.
I mean, that's like the underlying theme of everything. The specific one of this though is alcohol consumption.
Okay. And maybe reckless driving.
Yeah.
Which may go hand in hand with alcohol consumption, but also perhaps if you're a 19-year-old and, I don't know. What if a bad cop is chasing you and you need to like flee and he can just shut your car off?
All
That's a
right.
problem.
I've seen some action movies, right?
Yeah.
Like, you
I mean,
know,
you're not going to get to go John Wick on them. You're not going to get to outrun them. I mean, none of that's going to happen.
I just gonna shut off the car.
They're just going to shut you down and you're going to pull over to the side of the road. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it.
Kind of creeps me out. But so he had an amendment to modify this, and which is interesting because it ended up failing at 201 to 229, so like pretty close. And only 2 Democrats voted for it. One of them being Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, which
Oh my God.
interesting.
Oh my God. Like, look, if she wasn't such a psycho identitarian communist, I think I would actually like her. Like, you know what I mean? Like, all right, so she wants like special like sunscreen from Korea. Great. So she takes on the FDA. That's not selfish at all. I get it. But
I don't know, man. She might be one of those Democrats who's like occasionally libertarian until like economics comes up, and then it's okay. Whatever, that's all out the window. No,
until
never mind.
she's like communism, until she does that part of it, and like there are things that I don't want freedom for, and she does play on the populism identity politics, which drives me crazy, but she does occasionally come across with good takes. And lately, Kevin, like I've been going, look, I've been tweeting, competing on her tweets for attention. And I'm just saying, if you weren't such a communist psychopath, I think I'd actually like you. Like I've been saying that to her, and with mixed responses.
Yeah,
Sometimes
I'm sure she loves that, but
yeah.
No, she has some very reasonable opinions on like civil liberties issues.
She does,
and even some like regulatory issues. Even though it's like it's funny because like there's a lot of Democrats who like realize that there's an issue with regulatory issues, like the stuff that came up, like stuff that comes up with zoning, stuff that came up with like the sunscreen regulations, stuff that came up with the baby formula regulations. A lot of Democrats are like, wow, there's like a problem here. We need to fix this. And like you and I are just sitting here like, just okay, you're so close to getting it.
So close. But like their identity politics, it's like they're gonna do it one issue at a time. We're gonna force the FDA to let us have the sunscreen that we want. We're gonna
right. They frame it that way. Like we're gonna like get this demand. Like, no, the problem is the regulation. Like you're so close to getting what the actual problem is, and just jump to like, oh yeah, we want this thing, and it ends up being all ad hoc.
So look, Massey took on the entire world he was accused of defending Rashida Tlaib, which is in fact inaccurate, but he stood by free speech. And I don't like Rashida Tlaib. I think I've been clear about that on this show. I think she's also a divisive identitarian. But he's like, look, sure, we can punish her for certain things, but what you're actually trying to do is not correct. She has the right, just like everyone else does, to free speech, and I stand on principle. Again, it's hard to not like a guy like that for me, and I've taken heat for liking him because people are like, no, that's a stupid take. Punish the Democrats. And it's like, we have principles, bro. That's what this country was. If we don't get back to the principles of what this country was founded on and it's the bipolarization, Kevin, of the United States of America. Get it? Bipolarization. It was my big joke. I've been working on it all day. All day. How'd I do?
There you go. No, great.
Right.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah. You can quote me on that one too, guys. Bipolarization of America.
Get the video cuts ready.
Yeah.
No, so anyway, I do respect Massey when he actually sticks to his principles on this stuff, and he's one of the more. I don't always agree with him, but he's at least fairly consistent, and I can respect that.
I was even mad at him when he didn't participate in wanting to punish Adam Schiff. I was a little bit like, oh my God, we've got this guy. Take him out, just crush him right now. And he was just like, that's not how this works, and he did a massive explanation on Twitter, and I had to read through it, even though I was upset. And fine. Okay, he was right. I forgive him. Like, but still, we had Adam Schiff right where we wanted him, and I hate that guy.
Yeah. Anyway, do you want? You were going to talk about something else with Massey too, weren't you?
Oh my God, it's the worst thing ever, Kevin.
Another
Like,
one.
remember, like Adam Schiff said something cool, and I'm like, oh my God, this is awful. And you're like, you posted a meme where the worst person ever said something I agree with, which happens as a libertarian happens far too often, right? But
Yeah.
so Massey, we've got a couple things going on, but Massey has always been a proponent of this Prime Act, which would allow local farmers to introduce their products in a more direct fashion to your local grocery, okay? Which would be an absolute freaking boon for beef prices, an absolute boon for beef production in your local areas. It would be an absolute, like, know where your beef is coming from, because the laws right now, as they're written, you don't even get to know where the country of origin of your beef product. It's like kind of ridiculous. So, anyways, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Oh my God, Kevin, I can't even say it because that's how much I don't like her. I can't even say what she did. But all right, she
Get it out.
sponsored the Prime
Believe
Act
in you.
in the Senate. She did it, and I'm
Yeah.
very happy. You
Yeah.
know,
That's great.
yeah.
No, I mean,
I got representation from my senator. It's wild.
you know, I by our like once or twice a year, like positive representation from every once in a while, Senator Gillibrand and Schumer get something right. It's weird.
Yeah, well, trees for Rochester and all over the state. Who could argue against trees,
That's
bro?
right. Everyone loves trees, man. We love trees.
Yeah,
Millions on trees. Love it.
yeah. So anyway, so yeah, like that's a frustrating thing. But she
So
did do it. She used to be
know.
very pro 2A. That's how she got elected in rural upstate New York. Like
Yeah, she was like a moderate member of the House, like for a while. Like it's just
she was okay, and then she kind of, I don't know. Whatever, went down this communist wormhole, but here she is doing something good for America,
great.
for your local
I'm
farmers.
surprised that she is willing to embrace beef anarchy.
Yeah,
but
that's
like
anarchy.
Yeah, I'm interested to see like how she's gonna support totally. I heard that it means that meat is totally unregulated now, and that like people just like be getting rotten meat that the feds can't inspect.
Your local, you're still going to go through USDA inspections. Like it's just that it can't get to your local grocery from the local farm. It's the weirdest thing ever. Like
I know.
It's just
like it's funny how like I'm just for those listening that aren't clear, I'm mocking like how people talk about this, not what it actually does.
Right. I think they got that because
yeah,
and I got it. So that's all right. So that was really good. I'm very happy that Kirsten Gillibrand introduced something with common sense, and that would be a major benefit to rural New York, which is great. John Fetterman also taking a stand for
another ag issue. Let's
the Pride.
Yeah, like it came up again. What's the name of the act? The Dairy Pride Act.
Dairy Pride Act.
Dairy
Not
Pride
just
Act.
Act. Sorry, guys.
And it's here to protect, us from getting all confused, because us people, we're going into the store and we just see something with milk on it and we're like, oh God, obviously that comes from a cow. Like someone milked the coconut. And like or how they get the cow's milk in the coconut, I don't know. It's so confusing. And so like what they're gonna save us, the members of the Senate and folks like John Fetterman, they're gonna save us from getting confused with coconut milk and almond milk and these other non-milk milks, and they're gonna prohibit these companies from putting misleading labels on these non-dairy products. Like the milk, say it's gonna get regulated, it's got to come from a cow or like another like animal that produces milk.
I could tell you right now that dairy farmers are, first of all, so thankful that the day after daylight savings time that John Fetterman came up with, reintroduced the Dairy Pride Act. He's also making news in another area, Kevin. Like there was, I believe, a pro-Palestinian protester at one of his speeches, and the guy's yelling at him, and John Fetterman snazzy dresser and witty comeback says, "Look, I've had a stroke. I have no idea what you're talking about."
Oh no.
Directly to the Palestinian protester, which is honestly a pretty fair comeback.
Hey,
It's like
fair enough. I mean, he is in the Senate. Like, there's some expectations there, but
I mean, in a way, like I like the way he dresses, and I know that drives people crazy. But look, I've lost a lot of respect for our governing institutions. We talk about the
you
reasons
had
why.
respect.
What's that?
You had respect for our governing institutions?
No. Well, Kevin, I used to be a neocon, man. I'm like, we're going to solve these problems in this world by exporting democracy at the point of a gun to foreign countries who we have economic interests in, right? So it was like, oh, but hold up, but why aren't we forcing democracy on Saudi Arabia? Well, that's not going to work because they have oil. And I'm like, well, kind of my whole neocon principle is like, that should be a democracy and they'll still sell us oil, so it's like, there was a lot of cognitive dissonance kicking around. I was mostly busy making a living, so I didn't take it too serious. But I'm just saying,
sure.
My neocon days, I had some respect for what I perceived as the institution of the U.S. government. I had a lot of respect for what I perceived as the most successful societal experiment, and I still have a lot of respect for that. Like, I'm not, but the most
we got like Tim. We got like a minute left.
Oh no, man. Well,
in
anyways,
the
the U.S.
show
is
part.
a successful societal experiment.
Yeah.
We're in troubled times. The Republicans got it all figured out. Some of you guys probably watched the debate. We should
No, maybe we'll talk about that in the after show. I think I want to end with again reiterating how dumb the Dairy Pride Act is. Like, this thing pops up every once in a while. Like, and I'm sorry, like I can't. It is so ridiculous and so like paternalistic to say like us dumb consumers don't know the difference. Like, we don't know what we're getting when we get coconut milk. Like, and it does absolutely nothing to help dairy farmers. It is like empty, vacuous, like virtue signaling. Like, oh, look, I'm supporting the farmers. No, you ain't. It's not like we're not getting confused about this stuff.
No, nobody's confused.
Except for maybe John Fetterman, but like whatever.
Ouch. Ouch.
Just saying, like,
no,
I know what I'm getting. I'm choosing to drink dairy milk because I don't like almond milk that much. Oat milk's okay, but I'm usually just using dairy milk.
I like almond milk. I don't like coconut milk.
Yeah, like that. But like, we all know the difference. No one is getting confused here. The government does not need to step in. It's fine. Butt out, guys. Anyway, just take what I said there and apply that to everything else too. And on that note, we're gonna end the end the radio show. Thanks again for joining us here at WYSL on A Free Solution. For those listening online, we're gonna keep going a little bit. Well, anyway, again, thanks for joining us. Have a great night, folks. Take care.
All right, that was fun.
Yeah,
that was fun.
Yeah. I know. I know you want to talk about the Republican debate was going on tonight, right? Like,
it was, man. It was.
Did you catch much of it? The only thing I caught was like the one line from Vivek Ramaswamy about the 3-inch heels. It was a banger. Like, it was a good one.
Yeah, I tweeted it. I tweeted it out instantaneously. It was perfect because it was on the subject of war, which I hate, and for lots of reasons. The least of which is that truth is destroyed in war, and we're seeing the worst of all wars. Everything about war we're seeing as a society right now. And so when you listen to the Republican debate, it was the first one I listened to. We were going to war with China, like that's it, And now this one is every Republican on stage, except for Vivek, is like, well, what we have to do is really start beating up on Iran right now because Iran responds to strength, and it's like, okay, so now we're at war with Iran. And I'm like, look, there's problems with Vivek Ramaswamy, but like, listen, if the Republican Party actually wants to put a meaningful foot forward and say, we're actually about liberty, Vivek does the best job of articulating liberty. Like, I like some of the things that Ron DeSantis says, but he always swoons authoritarian and in a way, kind of scarily authoritarian, Kevin. It's not like he's not halfway authoritarian. He's not like, hey, Disney had a great deal. They made me mad. We're taking away their great deal. Like, the great deal wasn't just for Disney. It was a great deal for the entire area that they took from Disney. So it's like, so when he goes wildly authoritarian, he's like, he's terrifying. He's like, hey, we got rid of, Confucius schools and like free speech. That means nothing.
Yeah,
That,
no, John in here with the comment, John on YouTube, he says, love
yeah,
DeSantis saying he would prohibit any pro-Hamas speech on campus. Let's end the
yeah,
First Amendment right now.
let's just
Yeah,
end it. Just
yeah. Again, like,
end
and
it.
yeah, like, so for Ron DeSantis and folks like him are like, oh no, we need to, like, end this stuff. We shouldn't allow like any like pro-Hamas stuff. Like, the people who do this suck, right? Like, really, like the people doing like the some of the pro-Hamas, like not even just pro-Palestinian, but pro-Hamas stuff. Those people suck, and like they deserve
They
our
do.
scorn. But they have
They
First
do.
Amendment rights. Like, that is a foundation of a free functional society, is the First Amendment, and we don't get to arbitrarily erode that because of our preferences.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, those guys stink, but like that is what makes our society function, and we will alienate the folks who are doing that. There's going to be consequences for them being detestable and supporting detestable organizations. We don't
Yeah.
need the government to step in and ban this speech. In fact, it would
It's a bad
even
idea.
more seriously. Yeah, it's a bad idea for like a million reasons.
So,
But
like, let me put it to you this way, Kevin. Let me ask you a question, and I can tell you're a lot like me, though younger and still believing in the benevolence of like our political class. I'm working on you there. But look, have you ever had a conversation with somebody where their mind changes just a little bit, like their emotional level comes down? I can remember when people were very pro Hillary, and I was like very anti Hillary, and I'm pretty good at having conversations with people, and at the very least, I'm not sure that I changed their mind about their vote per se, but we were able to have a conversation because they were saying crazy things, and I'm like, well, that sounds crazy. So, like, if someone's coming at me and they're all pro Hamas, and I say, seems like a religious theocracy, and I'm not sure that that's what we need. Where's that person going to go if they don't have me to reflect that off of? Do you understand what I'm saying there?
yeah,
Like,
right. Like, that's an opportunity to engage with folks, and it's fine because like a bunch of activists will make like kind of gotcha videos of like folks who are like caught like showing up at these rallies and talking about Hamas, not really realizing like what they're doing, or they're talking about them as like liberators and stuff. Like, and a lot of them are just like naive. Now, there are
right.
some true believers out there. There are some people who like, no, what they're doing is good, and I believe in the cause. But then there's a bunch of people who are just kind of, it's like left wing contrarian.
Sure.
And that's like kind of where they're at. And you talk
You hit
people
the
through
nail on
that.
the head there with that
Yeah.
contrarian idea. A lot of young kids are very contrarian and they get caught up. So yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize.
No, I mean that was mostly my point though. It's like, so there's an opportunity to talk to people. They can have their speech on campus, do their thing again, not just because it's a fundamental First Amendment right thing, but also like there's opportunities for counter speech too. And I always make the argument like anytime the government can like start encroaching on that right and start building on their efforts to like have speech that you don't like forbidden, and by forbidden it isn't just casually like, oh, you're not allowed to do this. That means that the government can use force to prevent you from sharing your ideas, right? It can be
Yeah,
turned against you. Like, every time we do that, ratchets it up a little bit. Like, we need to continuously fight for this right. It is a never-ending struggle to fight for free speech, because
it
like
is.
there's always going to be people on every end of the political spectrum who are going to try to take it away, who find other speech like ugly or dangerous or whatever. And so I bet, like, I've talked with left-wing folks who said the same thing too. Like, we need to ban hate speech. I'm like, okay, you want to ban hate speech? This was during President Trump's presidency, and I'm like, what happens when he considers like your communist beliefs like hate speech? I didn't say that specifically, but like, what happens when like he considers Black Lives Matter protests hate speech or dangerous? No, that is a fundamental First Amendment right. If you're on the left, you don't want Donald Trump using that power. If you're on the right, you don't want, I don't know, RFK Jr. using that power. Like,
Yeah, no, the simple.
because he's talked about like executing the Koch brothers or something. Like, what was this thing on that?
I don't know, but it
Yeah,
was.
he thought like you should ban like speech that like is against climate change. Like, he had a whole thing on that for a while.
Look, like that's one of the things about RFK that terrifies me, right? First of all, we're in a populist authoritarian society. I feel as though it kind of like the whole populist rhetoric in my life started with like Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was very much a populist. globalist, right? He certainly was not so much an authoritarian, and he certainly was an effective, like, free trader, knowing that it would increase the perception that Americans had more wealth, which it did, right? NAFTA increased the wealth of Americans because all of a sudden we could buy lots of junk for less money. And people talk about devaluation, and I'm like, well, like, devalue Taco Bell back to $5, man, and I'll eat there 3 times a week. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. Devaluation on some level is wealth accumulation. It depends on how it happens, but like, we shouldn't be just afraid of it.
Yeah, no, it's a thing that can be fine. Sometimes that devaluation, that lowering of prices, it means people have better access to some goods and services.
Like Taco Bell, bro,
Like
on
Taco Bell.
McDonald's. Like, come on,
Just
man.
People
Like,
gaining efficiency, Taco Bell, TVs, things like that. It's a good thing.
yeah, pretending that a $13 cheeseburger from McDonald's a meal is like a sign of a healthy economy is truly problematic. And maybe I don't know how to bring it home for, and again, I've always asked this question. How do we bring it home to more people? Like, hey, you just paid $18 for a Big Mac meal. Like, there's a problem in the economy. Do you realize that? Like, maybe if we did it as a percentage, right? Like, $18 used to be, let's see, how would we do it the other way? All right, a McDonald's cheeseburger would cost you 1/3 of an hour's worth of work. And now it's costing 2/3 of an hour's worth of work. Would explaining it like that help people out, or are they just too stupid and bipolarized?
No, it depends on who it is, right? But like, because I mean, it is an important way to think about stuff, right? Like, if you're thinking of like, okay, for this one meal, based on what I'm getting paid now, like, because your time is valuable. Like, is it really worth exchanging an hour of my life that I got some money for, that I'm gonna have to exchange another hour of my life for to go get this cheeseburger?
I literally do it all the time. Like, I don't know how everybody doesn't do it. Do you do that at all? Like, I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
this shirt is gonna cost me an hour of my time. I don't like that shirt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, no, you have to think about that. It's like, okay, this is my precious time that I could have been doing something else, and especially like when I'm doing like freelance work too. I'm like, okay, I know my hourly rate for this, roughly what I make an hour.
Right.
If I want to go out and get this thing, it's going to cost me 4 hours, right? That's 4 hours that I'm not able to watch TV or hang out with my wife or hang out with my kid, whatever. Is it worth getting that thing?
Yeah. No,
You know,
it's
sometimes the
it
answer is
isn't,
yes,
sometimes
but
it isn't. If that
yeah.
thing can't propel me across my lake at like 50 miles an hour, I'm not sure it's worth 4 hours, right? Like,
Yeah, right.
like, I'm just saying.
That's a good reason.
Yeah. Like, I can fill up my boat with 2 hours worth of work. And so, like, that's like 12 hours worth of beer drinking and good times on the lake. Like, it's the way that we've gotten so politicized as a society that we've lost track of what really matters, what's real value. So, when inflation is 8% a year or 4% a year, and your hourly stays the same or grows at 2% a year, you're losing economic freedom. It's real.
Yeah. So it is like it's eating away at your time. I think about taxes the same way too, because
Oh my
there's always
God,
the tax freedom day stuff. It's like, okay, so you can think about it that way. I had to work, whatever, like 4.5 months to just pay the government.
Yeah. My
Yeah,
property
all
tax.
that those, I know you're it's getting spaced out, but like, how many months did you have to toil to make sure that the government got their cut?
It's wild. Like, if we see that shrink, that means wealth is growing. If we see some devaluation in certain areas, that means your wealth is growing. If we see less war, that means our wealth as a society is growing. So when I watch the Republican debate, everything while I was watching was focused on war, right? And they're like, well, we only have 250 naval ships, and what we need is 600. And we need 600 naval ships in 4 years. And it's like, we're going to pretend that's a win, but I actually got to thinking even more. As long as those naval ships aren't blowing up bombs, that's accumulated wealth for society, right? So as long as they're not getting sunk, I'm like, all right, build a naval ship. Like because we're such a big, huge society, some group efforts have to go on, right? That do demonstrate wealth and that do arguably demonstrate power. So build a ship. Just don't shoot anybody with it. Don't drop bombs out of it. I'll be like, okay.
Yeah. Tim, big fan of the military industrial complex, just not using it.
Well, ships with no guns, I guess, is what I should say.
No guns. Well,
I don't know.
it's not going to scare anybody.
No, I get the conundrum of what I'm saying. It's just like,
well, I mean, no, that's the thing. I mean, like that. There's like a joke on like the West Wing about that. About like that there's some presidents that's how they govern is like they like big militaries and they don't want to use them. There's some who want to cut military spending. They want to use them all the time. And
yeah.
I know.
Well, arguably, like the pyramids and arguably some of the structures we see in South America, where like the government coercing or convincing their societies to expend some of their excess wealth to balance out kind of a Keynesian economics principle, right? So that they feel some sense of scarcity, so that they don't, I guess, so they don't reproduce indiscriminately, which which leads to poverty, and poverty leads to war, kind of thing. So it's like, hey, help us build this thing, and we won't end up wrecking each other. It's going to be great.
Is that well? I mean, like maybe I don't know that like, I don't think that there's anything like the pyramids and whatnot were built for the explicit purpose of like keeping the population down. I mean, like maybe like a focused common purpose, but really, I mostly thought of it as like a vanity project. But I know it's more complicated than that.
Well, arguably, so there's lots of schools of thought. So like modern archaeology is saying the pyramids were built to, for as a vanity project for pharaohs, right? But other people are saying that the pyramids were actually built much longer ago and like are much bigger, and they keep discovering new pockets of the pyramids. And so guys, I've been listening to Joe Rogan. You can't, like, this stuff is not my fault. Like,
waiting for the aliens discussion to come.
Yeah, I mean, it could be aliens. Who knows? But arguably, something about that discussion made sense. Where we do a societal project that A, we enjoy doing, that B, presents something that lasts into the future, and that C, takes some of societal's excess and invest it in a structure, right? Or and therefore we respond better and we interact better and we avoid some levels of poverty. Does that make sense? Because if we experience hard times, then we just stop building the pyramids, and then society kind of goes back and struggles harder for food, and there's less of them. So I'm not sure if I'm the best guy to put words to this, but it does, on some level, what I'm saying makes sense.
It makes sense in the way that someone could certainly justify it that way. I don't know that it makes sense in a this is a smart idea type of way.
Oh no, I agree. Yeah. I agree. There's a problem with it. It's Keynesian economics, right? Isn't it on some level like the Keynesian philosophy? And whereas as a libertarian,
spending money for the sake of spending money generates the economy, right? That's
sure. It is modern monetary theory, right? And some successful societies, especially in South America, that's one of the theories as to why they did it. Although they aren't positing that it was necessarily on purpose. So it could be the vanity project, like you're saying, but it still helped society be successful because it imposed an artificial scarcity.
Interesting.
It's my philosophical 3 beers in kind of thoughts, that's the way I go, man.
So that's what you've learned from Joe Rogan. And
arguably Joe Rogan is a lot of you guys, if you ever listen to him, Joe Rogan is way more into pyramids than you might anticipate. There's going to be a lot of conversations about pyramids if you listen to Joe Rogan.
Why not? I don't know. I had a like phase for a while where I was watching all the History Channel content on pyramids and stuff. Whenever it was like 20 years ago now. But
yeah, what do you think? Just vanity project for pharaohs?
For aliens, obviously.
Oh, for aliens. Okay.
Yes, it's.
I do like the idea about aliens. I do. I still I move big, heavy things all the time, and I'm like, I can figure out ways to move big, heavy things with 20 guys relatively easy. So I'm just kind of like some of it.
Wait, you ever seen like any of the TikToks of? Well, I mean, I think there's a guy who did it a while ago, but like he was showing like moving these like 20-ton stones by himself. And
Yeah.
he's just doing like rocks and pivots and levers and like
all of that stuff was already in my brain before TikTok came along. And so when the internet first started, I sought some of that stuff out. I watched a guy spin a like 40 by 40 structure with a like 25-foot 2x4. As long as everything's balanced, it's a wild thing. You could lift a 20-ton stone 2 inches at a time. Just if you have its point of pivot, that's it. You could get it way up into the air. Like it would be wildly dangerous.
Right. I mean, there may have been some workplace accidents building the pyramids and Stonehenge and stuff like that. It may have happened, but they could do it, right? It's not like you don't need modern cranes to like be able to build that stuff. It's makes it easier for sure, but like there are ways of doing it. I said you find that pivot point, you can shift stuff around, you can move it up and down, it's possible.
Yeah. It's entirely possible. I feel like there was something else I wanted to talk about, but it's not leaping back into my brain. Oh, should we talk about the how are we doing on time?
I mean, we can keep going as long as we want, but
right.
What is it?
Arguably, our longest has ever been an hour and a half. But like the declining support for the Ukraine war on a couple levels is A, encouraging, but B, also a testament of sadness. Like it was always going to end here with Russia acquiring the territory that it wanted. And so would you walk me back off this ledge? Like, first of all, maybe the Ukraine war isn't days away from being over. And arguably, like, perhaps there is a purpose to NATO supporting Zelensky.
Well, all right. So, like, it's interesting because I've kind of watched this on like the right wing Twitter side, when we're like, oh my goodness, like the war is going to be over now and Ukraine's collapsing and blah blah. Like, that's not quite what happened here. It's more like American and Western newspaper media outlets reporting that like the U.S. is starting to pressure Ukraine to seek like an actual solution to this because they're in more or less a stalemate right now. There's some offensives haven't like regained the territory that they're hoping to and gotten that decisive victory. Russia's regrouping and going to be able to like hold their positions for a while, and that there's a lot of fatigue on like the American side and the European side for continuing to provide weapons. Like it's not going to be endless. The political support for that is going down. Therefore, the U.S. has been, hey, maybe figure out what you can get now, because like if you don't, you could keep fighting, but you might be doing it without our support, and you may end up with bigger losses because of that. Like that's the real high level version of that.
Sure, and I appreciate that analysis, but that as part of this narrative, as it changes, we're finding out that there was arguably a desire to make peace much sooner. Like 8-9 months ago, there was a desire on Ukraine's part to make peace that was discouraged by his NATO alliances, right? Like Boris Johnson went to him and perhaps put the kibosh on peace talks with Russia. And I'm frustrated by that. I'm disappointed by that. And I feel as though it's goes to the ability of the U.S. to pretend it's growing its economy.
Yeah, I mean, it like that to me, like it doesn't make sense to me. Like I'm sorry, like I've seen people say that, but like I don't quite understand that. I didn't like see that as being like the way it played out. Like I mean, the Boris Johnson, I think that was like it's actually longer ago than that, but
which makes it worse in a way to me.
Yeah, but like I mean, like and it wasn't quite like hey, you need to do this because we say so. It was more like, well, we think it's important to take a stand here. You're going to lose your country, like, and like you don't have to go into peace talks if you don't want it. Like that's the way like I understood that whole thing.
Yeah.
And like it's not so much like the United States is like, oh yeah, you need to keep doing this and throwing your people, at the Russians just because like we want to sell weapons to you. It's more like they want to keep doing that, and the US wasn't until recently putting pressure on Ukraine to like force a peace deal because it did support some of the US's geopolitical goals. But the Ukrainians also like want to fight because they're mad. They've had their territory taken. They're not
Sure.
happy with it.
Sure.
And they're staying in the fight in part because the West is willing to back them. And if the West isn't willing to back them anymore, then they might not be able to sustain that fight because they'll get even greater losses. If they continue the war without an agreement in place.
Yeah. I think my internet is dropping a little bit, bro.
Yeah, no, you're getting kind of fuzzy on my end.
Yeah, I missed a lot of that. I apologize. My internet's going out. Must be the weather kind of thing. All I know is war makes me sad, and it makes me angry at the people encouraging war. And so I was not a big fan of, I wanted a fast resolution. So I didn't get it. People are still fighting, and that to me is very like I don't know. I can't say it
Yeah.
enough. It's sad,
That's sad. Again, but on the Ukrainian side, like I get why they're fighting, right? Like if someone's like, did you drop completely, Tim? I don't know. I'll make my point while Tim comes back, even if he's not going to hear it. But my thought is just okay. Like if someone invaded, a chunk of New York, like a bunch of people here be like, hey, we're going to get that back. And we're going to be really mad at anyone who tells us like we don't deserve the fight to get that back, especially when you have like maybe relatives on the other side of that who can't escape.
That's a fair point. It really is. That's why I've always been trying to just maintain an anti-war posture, even though I get, again, when we get into the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, if I was a Palestinian, I get it. If I was an Israeli, I get it. When I get into Ukraine, I get it. I don't know, but my internet's kind of like dying. So
yeah. So man, it's time to end the show.
Yeah, we did pretty good though. We got it out there to an hour and a half. That's pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us, folks. Have a great night.
Have a good night. Yes, happy Veterans Day.